Hey out there, rock and rollers. Welcome to the 70th edition of the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast, recorded right here in central London, just off historic Abbey Road. A proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network, which you can find at pantheonpodcast.com or at pantheonpods. And we want to thank everybody for tuning into last week's show on Pink Floyd's A Momentary Lapse of Reason. I know that a lot of Pink Floyd fans don't even consider that a proper Pink Floyd album because it doesn't have Roger, and you don't want to slit your wrists after listening to it. But it was important for me and Jackson. We got a lot of positive feedback on the web and from folks who enjoyed the show, so we appreciate that. Its 35th anniversary is coming up a little bit later this year. March is International Women's History Month. And to that end, we thought we would put together a show of women who rock. I know that it's kind of a male-dominated industry, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot of great female rock acts and women in this business for sure. Nita Strauss just got to the top of the American charts for the first time, and I think it was 25 years that a solo woman had held that. I know the Warning Band and Plush are a couple of up-and-coming bands that are really good. And so we've got a couple of women on today, different fields, who we think need some attention. First up is Amanda Lehmann, and from this show, you know Amanda. We've had her on before. She's a fantastic musician, singer, songwriter. She's toured with Steve Hackett, and I got to see her live in London here last year. Her album, Innocence and Illusion, was fantastic. And she's got a new single out called One Last Spin. It's got a good cause attached to it. So we're going to talk to Amanda a little bit about that, but also talk to her about some things that we didn't get to cover last time, including not only her involvement in a Heart tribute band, but a little time that she spent with Asia, King Crimson, Family, UK, Uriah Heep, lead vocalist John Wetton. And second, we've got Anne Estella. She's a rock journalist with a great social media presence and a kind of a fire plug. You know, she's got a lot to say and she's got a great attitude. And she's out there finding new bands and covering festivals and trying to shed some light on what's the best experience for the fans and bands out there. She got a little heat recently from an article she posted about a festival that maybe wasn't living up to its end of the bargain, and we can get a little into that on the show for sure. But she's quite a character. It's a fun interview, and I hope you're going to like what she has to say to you here. As usual, we've got to plug. Please download and subscribe anywhere you like to get your podcast, where it's Amazon, Google Play, Spotify, Apple, Good Pods. Anywhere you get it, please do. And think about, if you like it, consider giving us a positive review. Not only does it help us find more rock fans like you, but we might just read it on the show. So a couple of great interviews with a couple of amazing women. Let's get into it right here. First up, it's going to be Amanda Lehmann, then Anne Estella. We're talking women who rock here on The Wolf. Oh, there she is.
Hello.
Hi, Amanda.
Hiya.
Welcome back to the show.
Yes. Nice to be back again. It seems like no time ago since I last talked to you.
Well, it kind of wasn't very long ago, I will admit.
But it wasn't, I suppose, was it? But yeah, time just flies, doesn't it?
I apologize. I'm not wearing a suit and tie today, but it's more.
No, I know. Yes, I mean, the standards are slipping.
Well, I'm actually technically on vacation. We're actually together in London.
Have you been to a certain gig then? Is that what you're doing?
All right, so he's here with his family. But I was at a certain gig on Friday night at the O2, waving goodbye to some people that you may be familiar with. I'm not going to get into the details, but I will just say that the gig that I saw at the Palladium with you this fall was much better value and a lot more fun and every bit as good musically as the one I saw Friday, without naming any names.
Cool.
So
cool. Oh, that's great.
Not to downgrade or denigrate anybody or speak ill of people who have bad health, but just tell Nads I will see him sing those songs before anybody else in the world anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. That's nice. That's grand.
But we only have we don't have as much time as we do last time, so obviously we want to just see how you're doing in the last couple months since we spoke, and talk about your latest single, which is kind of part of a big cause and a big project out of Scotland, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One Last Spin.
One Last Spin, and it's a beautiful song, kind of has a Baroque sound to it.
Was this a project that, do you have some kind of connection to the subject matter, or was it just something you were interested in?
Well, it's a funny thing because I've never really been hugely aware of it, of the whole thing of gambling. And I'd done an interview last year with Sylvia Fountain, radio presenter. And after the interview, we were chatting about this, that and the other. And the subject came up because she is involved with these guys who have now done a documentary about it called One Last Spin. And so she was talking to me about that. And I was sort of interested. And we got onto the subject of how gambling can affect people. And I think I hadn't realised the scale of the problem. I knew of it distantly, but it kind of brought it to the forefront of my mind, and I was quite shocked. And as the conversation went on, I said, look, well, I'm happy to help. I'll write a song for this. And that's kind of how that started. And they were really keen for me to use the title, which works brilliantly for a song anyway, because of the whole spinning kind of theme of gambling. And so basically, that's how it started. I didn't have any knowledge of it at all, so I had to go away and research because I didn't want to write a song just on what I assumed it was all about.
Sure.
I wanted to really kind of watch videos people had released, talking about it, reading about it. And I really kind of got into the whole psychology of it as an addiction in itself. It was quite an eye-opener, it really was. And now I'm just noticing on the TV or on the internet, wherever, just so many gambling adverts and luring people in all the time. It's sport. It's frightening. It's
and on the high street, right? You go walk down the high street. There's a couple betting parlors to go into. I'm like, that's different.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Unfortunately,
exactly.
In the United States, I think that it's not treated as well as it should be. I mean, if you're addicted to alcohol or drugs, I think people are much more sympathetic, but gambling is just as big of a problem. But unfortunately, it just doesn't get the press that it deserves, because it will ruin people pretty easily. And to your point, I mean, if you pay attention, there's stuff all over the place, especially now. I mean, we have all kinds of sports gambling in the United States on the internet. And we have cities built on gambling, so it's something that needs to be brought to light and people made aware of.
Yeah, I think that's very true. It is like building awareness, because it isn't one of those addictions or lures that people get into these cycles. It's not one of the ones that is most known about. I wasn't hugely aware of it, and I think that there is a lot of stigma around it, and I think with things like alcohol or drugs, it's a substance, so you can say, oh well, I got hooked on it, which kind of to a certain extent takes the responsibility off yourself, whereas I think that with things like gambling, there isn't a need, in the sense it's not a substance, so you can't say it's in my body and I'm addicted to nicotine. It actually, I think, is a lot harder for people to accept them, what is happening within themselves and be decent to themselves, but also the stigma around it. People say, well, they should just stop, shouldn't they? Or what a silly thing to do, and I think that there's a lack of understanding that goes with this.
I think the other problem is too, like if I showed up here intoxicated or on drugs, you would say there's something. But I mean, I could have just been standing on the street corner gambling all my life savings away, and you'd have never known it. Yeah. So I think it's something that you can keep a lot more hidden than other
very
addictions.
Much so. Yes, and I think along with that comes a huge sense of isolation that people feel because they are alone. It's hidden. Nobody knows it's going on, and they can be getting into worse and worse and worse situations. And this is the classic sort of thing that everything just falls apart with debts, and they can't run away from it anymore. But I think that the isolation that is felt is huge with this particular addiction.
When you decided to take on this project, did you have ideas for a song in your head, or did you start from scratch on this one?
Well, initially, I had an idea for writing a song about addiction anyway, which I will write anyhow, and I've got a lot of sort of prep already done for that. And I think the more I thought about this, the more I thought, actually, no, I'm going to write an entirely new song for this. So this needs a different treatment rather than a general one. So yeah, I did start from scratch on it, but I think that because I was So I was doing sort of research and watching things. And I think that gave me feelings and ideas, and those started, words rolling around. And I thought quite early on of the whole waltz type of feel to it, which is a kind of a very around.
And you're spinning around, yes.
The relentless wheel of fortune. And that sort of was very early on that I started to knit the words into that. But I did have to spend quite a long time getting the balance of it right and getting the message across, but also getting it across in a palatable way, so you're not turning people off, you're drawing them in to the song and into the subject, and then hoping that will kind of give an idea of what is going on with this thing.
I was going to say, the film itself, is that coming out later this year? Is that going to be in limited release? Is it already out? What's the story as far as the release of the film?
Well, the film, there is a trailer released at the moment, which there are links to. The film itself is not released to the public yet, because they're going to be showcasing this with sort of events that are all to do with this whole situation. And then once those dates are all completed, then that will then be on public release to watch. But yes, there is a documentary trailer, and any information you can find for this is on onelastspin.vision. So there's actually a website set up for this that you can always go and look at, and the link to the trailer is on that. So yes, it's the same name, onelastspin.vision. I've not heard of a .vision before.
But there you go. All right. Well, did you do everything on this track? Did you sing, play all the instruments, produce it? Did anybody help you arrange it, or is it all you?
It started off as all me. I wrote it all, arranged it all, put it all together, recorded the vocals and the guitar, and then I sent it off to Mr. Nick Magnus.
There you go.
Who I work so well with. I just so enjoy working with him. And I've said to Nick, look, I'm doing this project. I'd love your treatment on this. Are you interested? Yes, yeah, absolutely. So I sent my completed works over, and we chatted about the kind of thing that I was thinking and that he was thinking, and the whole sort of like little touches of fairground and the whole sort of idea of a sort of like a string quartet, and a little bit waltzy, a little bit again, a little bit Tim Burton in there, a little bit sort of unusual.
I heard that, definitely.
It did, yes, yeah, there is that slightly mad sort of off-kilter thing that you can imagine.
That seems like it comes in more at the end. Like, it seems like it's building more, like things are getting more chaotic, more off the rails as the song progresses. And you can kind of, if you really listen to the lyrics, you can tell this person is getting... It kind of starts off okay, but then we're getting farther and farther into we're going down the spiral. Spinning out. Yeah.
Spinning out of control. Absolutely. You're dead right. And I'm really glad that you say that, because that shows that the music has communicated that, because it gets madder, doesn't it? And it's all spinning, everything's all spinning around. And yeah, Nick Magnus picked up really well on all of that. Enhanced, because I've done spinny vocals, and then he enhanced that with everything he put into it, and obviously did his engineering on it as well, and he sent it back to me like, oh, I don't know what you're going to think of this, I really hope you like it. And I was like, yeah, I love it, it's absolutely spot on. So so happy with what he did.
And that's the nice part, I guess, about working with somebody like that. Like, you don't really have to communicate, like they just get what you want to do or where you're trying to go with it. Yeah. I can't imagine there's anything worse than just fighting. Like, you get it back, like, no, this isn't anything what I want. Right. You just, yeah.
Yes, because there's always that nervousness when you get something at you, or if I do something for someone and send it, and you're like, oh God, I like it. It's so subjective, isn't it? So yeah, there's always that slight sort of nervousness when you're particularly you're working remotely, so you haven't been thrashing it out in the same studio together.
Right.
You don't have that. Send it over and there's a silence.
Yeah, you don't have that real time interaction with hearing it exactly at that point in time and saying either yes or no. So yeah, it's like a present you're opening up. Like, I hope I like this.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, I know. It's really nerve-wracking. Opening presents, isn't it? The person who's giving it to you is looking at you like, oh God, I really hope I like this gift.
But I mean, I think it's a really good cause, because it seems to me that gambling's becoming more mainstream in ways. It's almost like this is a legitimate business. Like, you're not watching football and they say, come down to the corner and score some heroin. They can't do that on TV. But they could say, yeah, come to Paddy Power or come down, to the track or whatever. And I don't know when the lottery started here in the UK, but I have grocery stores a block away that all sell lottery tickets. And I remember the lottery started to become big in the 80s in America. And that's also where you started to see the middle class and the lower class getting squeezed because rich people don't buy lottery tickets. Only people who if I buy enough lottery tickets, I might win and that could change my life, Also, it used to be you could only maybe gamble in Vegas or maybe on a cruise ship or something like that. Now, most states have gambling boats or gambling parlors. If we can make money and we can give the profits to education, oh, okay, great. But it can ruin a lot of families, this gambling, and big businesses get in it to make money. But what's it do to the communities? I think it's a bigger problem than people want to admit.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a huge problem, and it's just in every corner. It's just everywhere you look. That's why I said demons at my door. It's everywhere. And yeah, as you say, you're not going to have somebody, saying, come and buy some heroin over here. You're not going to have that. And obviously, nor should you. And yeah, I think that gambling perhaps has a place. I don't know. Does it, doesn't it? I'm not quite sure about that. But I think there's no regulation that I can see on it. And it does seem to be spiraling out of control and more and more and more. Internet, you're just constantly bombarded with this stuff. It's frightening.
Yeah, and it's one thing if you had to go to an underground mahjong parlor to gamble. Now it's all on your phone. It's just like checking a score. You can just boop, boop. I just gambled this week's wages. Hope I win them back. That's just a little scary to me. Yeah. So I'm happy for you to bring some light to this and to be part of a just cause, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
I think it's also nice that the song it's a very serious subject. It's a very sad subject, but the music is almost, it fits, but it's not overly depressing. It balances it out, I guess is what I want to say. When I heard it the first time, I kind of thought of people dancing in a big ballroom, but then things falling down behind them or explosions or something that's something is coming along. You just don't see it yet, but you're going to fall off the cliff very soon.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, that is. I definitely did have a dance hall kind of feel about it, and exactly, I wanted it to be a song that was nice to listen to, that people want to listen to, and in a funny sort of way. Again, the gambling thing. Hey, it's all lights, it's all nice, it's fun. Come and play, we have a good time, and then the whole thing picks up, and as you say, it falls off the edge. And so if I'd start, when I started writing it, I gave it an introduction that was a bit like the end bit, which is kind of quite sort of a bit down and contemplative, and I recorded it and it was going to be there, and then I listened to it and I thought, I don't want that. That's not right. That's the end. That's not the beginning.
Okay.
So I stripped it all out, started again, thought, what am I going to do? And that's when I came up with the idea of just doing the vocals all on their own, just to sort of introduce the song, and then the sort of slightly spinny vocals, and then off you go. So it's very important, I think, to not just depress the hell out of people with something before you start it, because you want the message to get across. You want people to listen, right, and then to understand and become it's a story, and to be drawn in, definitely.
And you're down 5,000. Well, one last spin, right? We can get it all back. It's that's the wrong mindset.
Yeah, it's hellish, really hellish.
Well, you looked amazing in the photo shoot that you had that ended up, I think, in Prague with the blue dress holding your red guitar. Yes. I thought that's a great shot. I'm going to use that on Twitter if she lets me.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah, that's a pretty dress.
Yeah, you looked amazing.
Guitar.
Hi, this is Christy Alexander Hallberg, author of the novel Searching for Jimmy Page, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast.
We're happy to talk more about the film and your song, but the fact of the matter is, the last time you were on, we didn't get to ask you all the questions that we wanted to.
Yes, I do rabbit on.
Yes. And, well, anyone who knows our show knows that we are huge Asia fans, and we love the late John Wetton. And
oh, yes,
you've toured and played and sung with John. So I guess we just kind of want to be little kids at your feet and say, how was John, who we've loved since we were 9 years old? What kind of man was he? What was it like to play with him? Any stories that you can tell? We would love to know more about the late, great John Wetton.
Yeah, John Wetton is just he's such a nice guy, a really genuinely decent guy.
So good to hear.
It was just so easy to get on with. I remember the first time I met him, we were rehearsing and he came joining. He just joined in and he was so laid back and unpretentious. There was nothing kind of, Mr. Big about him at all.
Okay.
He was humble. He was just so nice. And he also had a wicked sense of humour as well. Really, really funny guy as well. We'd always have a laugh together.
Good to hear.
And I just really liked John. I enjoyed any kind of musical association with him, and I enjoyed chatting to him backstage. And yeah, a thoroughly nice guy. So very, very sadly missed. Yeah.
Do you think maybe it had something to do with the fact that he was a vocalist? That's probably what people know him for most. But he also was a musician. Not that a vocalist isn't a musician, but he played the bass, and he was involved with making the music on the stage also. Do you think maybe that had something to do with him not being kind of like a diva because he was also part of the band? I don't know. Like, it's interesting for me to see somebody who can do both of those things, because I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. And to have somebody who can sing and play the bass at a high level is pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely, it is. Yes. I think that he was a nice guy anyway. I think that I'm sure there are people who can do that, who are full of themselves,
happy with themselves, yeah,
as well as those that aren't. I think that but he was also very talented in being able to do all those things. He was a multi-instrumentalist, and again, just very kind of laid back with that. He didn't sort of push himself forwards or anything. He was happy just to slot in, do whatever. It was very easy, but it's just such a good musician, so talented, and just he had a presence about him as well. But again, it was a very natural presence. It wasn't a sort of the big I am. He was had a very solid presence about him. Yeah.
And that was about a decade ago or so that you did some tour, some shows with him?
Yeah, that would have been, I'm trying to think, the first time I met him was probably 2010 perhaps.
Okay.
He joined us, I think the first time was when he joined us. I think we did a gig at Shepherd's Bush show in London. Might have been that one. And we did All Along the Watchtower. That's great.
That's fun.
Yes,
can we find recordings of that anywhere?
It's not recorded as such. I think there are YouTubes here and there. That one actually? That one I think was on one of the very first live DVDs. That might be. Oh, I'll have to look that up. Or you guys look up. I think it might have actually been one of the live DVDs of Steve Hackett's live DVDs. So I have to have a look. It might be there for posterity actually, but if not, there's YouTube.
Okay.
Which means I might have it, because I have bought everything Steve's done the last 12 years. It's just I don't have them all with me here in London, so I can't just look them up. But of course,
that might.
Okay. Well, but of course, I have the Tokyo tapes that he made with Steve before maybe you guys were working together. But the Tokyo tapes that they did in Asia was amazing. Amazing group of talent. But then to sing his own songs, to sing Kim Crimson, to sing Genesis songs with Steve, to do a little heat of the moment, that was special. And so I knew that Steve had known him and played with him. But when I saw on Twitter that you had also toured, I'm like, well, we've got to get a hold of that, man. We got to know about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
very enjoyable. Yeah.
Now, something else that we looked up, because we love American rock and roll. I'm actually going to be we're going to be talking with Deborah Bonham next week, because she's got a great new album come out, a fellow Tenacity PR act. And I saw her open for Ann Wilson, Jeff Beck, and Paul Rogers. And you have a little connection to Heart in that you were in a Heart tribute band, were you not?
I was, yes. I was the part of Nancy Wilson. So that was such fun. That was really good fun. That was. I thoroughly enjoyed learning all those parts. And Nancy's always been one of my kind of icons anyway, since I was very young, with listening to Dreamboat Annie, that album. is I think one of my favourite Heart albums, and I've always thought that, like, the guitar at the beginning of Crazy on You, that acoustic, I thought, oh, I've got to learn this.
Yeah.
It's not the kind of style I normally play, so it's great because I learned a lot by having to learn her parts, and that was also fun because with when you're playing prog music, you can kind of move around obviously, but you got to be. I think when I first joined Steve in the band, I was like, and I realised I had to calm down a bit because everybody else knows. Like, I think I'm probably being quite annoying. I need to just stop being quite so manic all the way through. So, but with something like Heart, you can fling your hair around and spin around and really, just do all the glam rock things. So that was also fun. And the band that I played with were all really nice people, really good musicians. Lisa Fury, who took the part of Anne Wilson. She's got an amazing voice, absolutely, really full of gravel and very powerful. So it was, I think it was only about a year or so we did that because we were all busy and we just didn't really have the time to carry on with it. But we gigged, so we did just quite a lot of gigs with it. And we gigged like a couple of sort of biker festivals, and it was just really, really good fun. So enjoyable. Was
this like 80s Heart, the look that you were going for?
Yes, I just haven't got my hair.
I was going to say, so there's a lot of hairspray going on there. Right.
Hairspray and
probably took them longer to get ready than actually play the show.
Play the gig, yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's right.
What was the name? What was the name?
It was called Reckless Heart.
Reckless Heart.
Reckless Heart.
I'm sorry I missed that.
It is a shame. Yes, it was good.
Well, Nancy is an inspiration, and it's, she didn't just inspire women to be like, well, she can play just like as well as the boys, then I can go out and do it. But I know a lot of young men who are like, well, I better at least be able to play as well as Nancy Wilson, so I better practice these Heart songs, right? Because she can jam. And yes, they did well in the MTV era because Nancy's, I would say she's a beautiful woman.
It didn't hurt.
It didn't hurt. It doesn't hurt the MTV, the glossy MTV years, but to last this long, it can't just be about your looks. You have to deliver with the goods, and they do.
Now, I will say, I saw it was Anne and Nancy, and I think Carrie Underwood, and it was like one of these icon performances. And so, I don't even remember what song it was. It was a Heart song, but I don't remember which one. And Carrie Underwood was singing. And then Anne Wilson came in and was like, go ahead and sit down, little girl. And she just the power in her voice just dwarfed her. And I was like, wow, like just blew her off the stage. Like, that's a real performer, kids.
Yeah, yes. Tons of charisma, tons of talent.
And just power. And then the thing was, but then you always had Anne as the lead singer, but then they do These Dreams, and all of a sudden, now Nancy can be the lead singer on a #1 hit, written by Bernie Taupin, I think. Yeah, no, that's a lovely song. But it was one of the ones we covered in the band, so that was my lead vocal spot.
Are there any YouTube videos of Reckless Heart out there?
Oh, probably, but then these things, right? They got the sound is all naffed up, and there's nothing I would go, oh, there's this one actually. It's a shame because it would have been lovely actually to get some really good. We were going to actually put together some proper footage of it, but again, it's just time, and we didn't prioritize it enough. It's a shame because it was good. Well, and that's what stinks for people like us, because we think every concert anywhere should have been recorded professionally so that you can put it out. It's like, okay, we don't have the time, we don't have the equipment, we don't have the money to do this. Yeah, I mean, I wish everything was available like that, but unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't happen like that. No, that's true. It doesn't. Going back for a split second, I think that it's Live in Hammersmith, not the latest one, that the original Live in Hammersmith live DVD that's got All Along the Watchtower with John Wetton on it. I'm pretty sure that's the one that's got that on it.
We'll look for that. We'll find that for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, suddenly, my brain caught up with myself.
That's okay. I was just curious. I mean, this is secondhand information coming from you, but I know that Joe and Steve and the band were in Poland recently. And,
Correct.
Obviously the situation in Ukraine has got everyone just really upset and kind of unnerved about the future. It seems to me that the Polish people have been very generous and gracious as far as letting millions of people into their country and trying to help those who have lost their homes. Can you give us a sense, if you spoke with them a little bit about what the feeling was in Poland during the few days they were there?
I think that there was obviously a heightened awareness because you're, particularly like Warsaw, you're very near to what's going on.
That's right.
It's quite strange. There were a lot of people around who were obviously escaping from there, and there was just I think there was an atmosphere of activity around it, but I think it was, in a way, I think they found it was more normal than they thought it would be. They thought it would be more kind of like perhaps stressful or
scary,
or whatever. It's scary, but it everybody was kind of going along as normal. So, and I think that's what does happen, isn't it? That you kind of carry on with your life and everything just fits in, you readjust and carry on. And I think that, I think they were doing an absolutely incredible job over there of helping people. And sadly, it seemed to be rather difficult to get people over here to help them. They were definitely not. It wasn't easy, made easy to get them over here, which I think is a terrible shame. But yes, I think over there they are doing a huge amount. But I think the atmosphere was quite. It was heightened, and I would imagine that the doing those shows over there as well was great for people because
it's an escape.
It gives a lightness, doesn't escape. That's right, and it's just something for people to just absorb themselves in and thoroughly enjoy and just be somewhere else for a while rather than thinking about this awful situation over, on their doorstep. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that, because those dates I think had been rescheduled, so I'm glad they could complete those dates. Of course, yes. Then the band was supposed to go to Canada for about 4 days, and I guess there was someone had a positive test, so I'll have to reschedule those, right?
That is a real shame. Yeah, it's just one of those things. You can't get over there if someone's got COVID. So, nobody on a plane is going to want that anyway. So, it's a real shame. It's just like, be careful, because, and hopefully get out ASAP for the next lot of gigs as soon as it's able.
Well, they're coming to Florida, and I think Action here is going to see them in Florida, but we're already talking about, Foxtrot at 50. I believe it's October 12th that you play Hammersmith. I have one ticket, but he's like, well, maybe I'll fly over. I'm like, well, how am I going to get the ticket next to me, man? They already sold those.
Yes, that's true. Yes.
But he wants to see you, I think, is the point. He's like, I'll see the band and it'll be great to do seconds out, but I would like to see Foxtrot at 50 and I'd love to see Amanda play. I'm like, all right, well.
Yeah, and Foxtrot's a great record. I mean, I'd like to see it start to finish, and yes, having you there would be an added bonus.
Thank you. So I'll be there.
I mean, do you have any other things planned? I mean, obviously you'll be touring this fall, and you say you're writing some songs. And when we did our last interview with you on Innocence and Illusion, you said, I've got some more stuff going on. So anything this summer that we need to know about?
Nothing being released yet because I'm still working on it. And I've also been working on some collaborations with people I promised last year and said, but I can't do them yet. So, I've got a sort of a backlog of music that I'm working on that I've promised to work on, which is lovely because it's really exciting working on other people's projects as well, because it kind of expands your mind a bit more sort of creatively.
Good.
So I'm at the moment, a lot of the music for my next album is in my head, but there's an awful lot of it. So I'm really looking forward to this, getting that down onto something tangible and making progress with that. So I will keep you posted on that one. Please do.
And you're welcome back anytime. If you got something that you'd like to talk about, we love having you on.
Excellent. Oh, that's cool. That's good because you guys are really good and you ask some really interesting questions. It's just like really nice chatting to you. So
thank you.
Yeah, more people need to hear it.
Before we let you go, Amanda, can you give us the website for the One Last Spin movie one more time, please?
OneLastSpin.vision.
.vision.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's One Last Spin, all one word, OneLastSpin.vision. So it's quite easy to remember, actually. If you can just remember the vision bit, that's the bit I forget.
Yeah. And you can be found at amandalehmann.co.uk?
Yes, that's my one. Yes, amandalehmann.co.uk.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you kindly.
Yeah, lovely to talk to you guys.
Thank you.
That was a fun chat with Amanda, our second chat with Amanda. We had a great chat with her a couple of months back, talking about her album, Innocence and Illusion. It was great to be able to catch up with her on One Last Spin, her new single attached to the film of the same name about gambling addiction and the woes thereof. And I hope everyone can check out. Just great to be able to talk to her about playing with John Wetton. Anyone who's listened to this show from the beginning knows that we're huge Asia fans, and we try to work Asia in every show. It's pretty easy on this one. So we really appreciate her giving her time to us here today and know that she's doing great. We shift gears now, though. We're going to talk to another woman in rock, Anne Estella, who is a rock journalist, is a great social media presence, and is covering a lot of different festivals around the UK this summer. And she likes to promote young new bands that maybe need the promotion that people haven't heard of but should. And we've been following her on social media for a while, so we thought we'd take the opportunity to sit down with Anne and get her to give us a little background on not only how she became a rock journalist, but what turns her on. What should we know about? What festivals do we need to know about? Which bands do we need to know about that we don't? So without further ado, let's get into our talk with Anne Estella here on The Wolf. Thank you, Anne. Welcome, Anne Estella, to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock podcast. We've been following you on social media for a while, but that doesn't make us unique. You have a very nice social media following, and you talk about the things, you promote the kind of stuff that we love. Rock music and concerts.
Nice to hear that.
Yeah. Festivals, things like that. And so we wanted a chance to kind of talk with you and get your perspective on a few things. You've kind of made a name for yourself here. Certainly lately, you've gotten a little bit of press here lately with one of your reviews, which we'll absolutely want to get into. But, for our folks maybe in America, I know you work for AMP, which is an American publication, but maybe you could give us maybe you could give us a little background on how, I know you're primarily, I think you would say that you are a writer, but obviously you're a rock fan, and you've helped promote a lot of bands and a lot of shows and festivals. So why don't you give us a little background on how you broke into becoming a rock journalist and kind of your journey into where you are now?
I love being asked this question because it's not a conventional journey. I didn't study journalism at university or anything like that. I did modern languages with a strong emphasis on literature and linguistics. So I've always had that love for language to begin with. And initially I went into a writing job in corporate finance.
Hey, me too.
It's the most creative of areas for a writer, and it was quite frustrating for me. The set way of writing stuff there, and you couldn't really give any opinion. It was all very, very much fact-based.
Of course.
And, I went, to cut a very long story short, or a longish story short, I ended up going to a gig a few years ago in Manchester at a venue I'd never heard of, because I had been out of the rock scene for quite some time at that point, believing there was nothing new out there, nothing good or worth listening to, as many people do, unfortunately, at the moment.
Right.
And I got a ticket for a gig because it was a band that I used to love back in the day when I was in London, and it was called the Dogster Moor, but now they're Tyler's Dogster Moor. And I thought, wow, they're still going. I think they had stopped for some time, but they were brought back, reincarnated, and I thought, I've got to go and see them. So I had the ticket, and I went to see them. And while I was there, of course, I watched the support acts, and one of them was a fairly new band from Manchester that I'd never heard of before, called Guerrilla Riot, and they just blew me away. And I decided I was going to write about the gig, I'd never written a gig review before.
Okay.
Barely ever read one, to be quite honest with you. But I used to like doing reviews. I love perfume. I used to write perfume reviews and that kind of stuff for an online website, for a blog. So I thought, well, I've been in touch with Manchester Rocks. I'd done a little search beforehand, before I'd gone to this gig. I wanted to know what was out there. Is there a rock scene in Manchester anymore? Because it used to be a brilliant one. That's pretty much what brought me here. Never mind university. It was a great rock scene.
Yeah, late 80s, early to mid 90s, it was incredible in Manchester.
I moved here in 95.
Okay.
So right in the middle of Manchester, and Oasis was everywhere.
Of course.
So anyway, I'd been in touch with Manchester Rocks, and they mentioned on their website that they were looking for writers. They said something like, join our team. I thought, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, I contacted them, and I spoke to the editor quite a few times. He said, well, yeah, we're looking for people that love writing, that can. I thought, well, I like both those things, and I'm going to this gig anyway. Well, why don't I write about it for you? So that's exactly what I did. I really immensely enjoyed writing about that, and especially this newer band that I was completely, blown away by. I thought, people don't know that these bands exist. They're on our doorstep, and they played to a tiny crowd. They were the first band on.
Sure.
There were hardly anyone there at that point. But this is wrong. People need to know about these guys, and there must be others like they took me on as like a permanent writer. I wrote huge amount of reviews. It was meant to be just gig reviews to begin with, but then they said, well, if we send you a list of new albums, do you fancy reviewing them? Okay, I'll give it a go.
Fun.
And all genres I got, from extreme metal to Americana and everything in between. So whether or not it was my cup of tea, it really didn't matter. I enjoyed the challenge. I enjoyed finding interesting things about it. Not the technical side so much.
Right.
I've actually got a classical background. I was a flautist, when I was a child and growing up. So I knew music from that side and as a fan of rock. So I generally wrote my reviews from a very, very personal perspective. Basically, it was how it made me feel, how being at the gig made me feel, what the music sounded like, so that if you weren't there, you could hopefully just really imagine what it would have been like. And I tried to capture that energy in my writing, and hopefully that's what I did. And from there, it just spiraled. I ended up writing for 5 UK publications at one point, and then, of course, the interviews started. So we do some interviews for us. Yeah, and, I'd kind of gone from writing to the interviewing side and thought, well, actually, no, I really, really like this. Then I started the YouTube channel, and it was from there that I decided, well, actually, maybe this isn't the way forward. I really want to do something to give a much bigger boost to the rock scene, and particularly the UK rock scene. And that's where my TV show Amped came into it. So that's another story.
Well, that's great to hear, because we take a very personal view of what we're talking about. It's kind of our experience with these great albums or with these concerts, with these artists that we like to review on our show. You have to make it personal. You have to tell your side of the story and your experience with it. And working into interviews, that's a lot of fun. I mean, I was going through some of your interviews on Antihero and HRH. You've done some great interviews, but, some real rock and roll heroes. I mean, you got to interview Glenn Hughes right when he was joining the Dead Daisies. You got to interview Phil Campbell between Bastard Sons and doing a solo album, which is pretty exciting. Mariah Formica is a cool artist. So, my question now is it more fun for you to kind of help break a new artist that maybe not everybody knows about? Or is it more fun for you to take someone who you've kind of loved your whole life, or is kind of a classic artist that it's like, oh man, I always hoped I could talk to that person, and now you have?
Yeah, I definitely prefer interviewing up-and-coming artists.
Okay.
Because it's always, a great honour to be able to interview the legends, shall we say, such as Glenn Hughes. And I had a lovely telephone conversation with him when I was interviewing him. And he did tell me that there were some things there that he'd said to me that he'd never mentioned to anybody. I think about his family and about his mother and all kinds of things. And it was absolutely lovely. But people like that have been interviewed a million times. There's nothing that you can't read about them anywhere online.
Right.
That's not really that much fun for me. Breaking out the new bands, that's what I'm all about. So, yeah, I mean, how long can you just write about the same sort of people, same bands over and over again? To me, that's not that interesting.
I would imagine, too, for the established people starting something new, a solo project or a new band, that would be hard for them, because most people interviewing them would just drift back toward the classic stuff, and they're there to talk about the new stuff. I would think they would kind of come in with that prejudice. They know that the interviewer is probably going to drift back to what they know. So that's got to be tough for you to kind of convince them, no, I know what we're here to do. I know we're here to talk about the new stuff. I'm going to take that forward. Where the new bands, they're just happy to be there and talk to anybody and are excited that you're showcasing them.
Absolutely. And the thing you do find sometimes with the more established artists is that they're so used to being interviewed that they sort of have set things that they say and ways that they say them, and it never really feels like you're getting anything particularly new, from them, that they haven't just told somebody else. So, and I like exclusives. If the band is going to tell me something, I want to know. I want to be the first to know.
Well, the other thing, too, is it sounds to me like a lot of times when you talk to people that have been doing this for a long time, they don't want to put all the cards on the table. They want to have very canned, like you said, answers where it's like they can't say anything crazy, where, they don't want a gotcha moment, or they don't want to come off as being arrogant or whatever. So you don't really get to talk to a real person. You kind of just get a scripted answer from them.
Very much so, yeah. With some exceptions.
Well, and that's your job. Your job is to make them feel comfortable. You're not going to talk about anything they don't want to talk about. You're not going to ask them anything weird. You're going to be respectful and get the message across. And then I think if you can break through, then you can have a real conversation with them. And especially somebody like you that's a fan of music.
So tell me a little bit about Ant. I mean, this is something that you're kind of producing and creating. It sounds like it's pretty exciting for you.
Well, you know what? We produced a pilot last November, and I'm working with a really good production team, great editor, post-production. My host couldn't be better, Brad Marr from Massive. He flew over from Germany for it in the middle of the whole pandemic. It was amazing, and I had loads of press there. Invited a lot of guests. We had a great time. Venue was ideal. It was at the Waterloo Music Bar in Blackpool, and it was a really, really good show. We were there all day interviewing the bands. We had live bands, so the audience there was there for a gig, basically.
Sure.
And it was just a really nice atmosphere, you know. We had pyrotechnics that the bands weren't expecting. It made them jump, which, it was great. And, of course, the hard work begins once the pilots finish in trying to get it commissioned or licensed. And that's the most difficult thing.
But it does seem that festivals are the way to be able to go see new music and to get young bands in front of bigger audiences. You say, oh, these guys are good live. Put them in front of a big audience, way down the bill. Maybe they're playing at 12:30 in the afternoon or something like that. But who cares? It's an opportunity for them to get their name on posters next to big names. Some people will be out there and see them and will discover them. So, is that part of why you do a lot of work on the festival scene?
Yeah, I really enjoy the festival, generally. It's great to be able to see them out there. They're very friendly. I don't like covering the big festivals, True, I've never had an invite to cover Download, but it's not my thing, I don't get that. I like to feel that when I'm at a festival that you're surrounded not just by good music, by kind of like a community. The rock community has that friendliness about it that I love, and you really sense that when you're at one of the smaller festivals, especially the charity festivals that I've covered, like Sabfest last year. That was lovely, small festival, good lineup, and it couldn't be nicer people, for a great cause. So I know there's one called Steel Paws, which is in Sheffield later this year that I'm hoping to get to as well. In fact, Sheffield seems to be the epicenter for festivals. I can name about 3 or 4 that I'm planning on doing this year in Sheffield. So I don't know what it is about the place, but
I did read your article about going to the Winter's, what was the name
Winter's
of this?
End.
Planet Rock's Winter's End. And the good news is, reading the article, I really felt like I was there. And the bad news was, I really felt like I was there. Yeah, it just sounded like a train wreck. But I was reading it and I was thinking, the whole thing must be a massive undertaking for the promoter to try and put this together. And maybe I was going to ask, did you think maybe it was a venue thing, or was it the promoter who really didn't do their job correctly? Because it just sounded like a train.
I say a little from column A and a little from column B.
There you go.
Yeah, the venue was completely unsuitable, and it would have taken a basic risk assessment to establish that. So how that passed the test for a 3-day festival, I don't understand. I don't know. The venue is definitely at fault, and the promoter for holding it there. Yeah, I don't need to repeat what I've written. You read it yourself. You saw how I felt about it. The whole feeling was one of hostility, towards me and my assistant, which I don't appreciate when I'm covering a festival for free anyways.
Well, and especially when you were trying to promote. Like, that's what you were there to do. You were trying to
If I'm going to a festival, everybody knows about it because it will be on my social media pages. It will be on all of them. It will be on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and I will promote them, and that's exactly what I did with this one. But it felt very one-sided, shall we say. And at the end of the day, Planet Rock don't need me to promote them, and I think that's the problem in a way. When you get to that size and that level, I think there's a feeling, well, we don't need anybody else. We don't need the press. We don't need good publicity. No one's going to say anything bad about us anyway. We can do what the hell we like. And, as long as they've got their thousands and thousands of people that listen to them and that are willing to go to the events and play and pay money for a subpar experience, then they're not going to worry what they give punters. I think, well, we'll get away with it, and that's fine.
Right.
So it's not fine, of course, but
that didn't sound like the best experience on the face of the earth. So let me ask you, what is the best festival you've ever been to?
Oh gosh,
big one.
No, there's been a few. SOS Festival was one of my favourites. That's in Manchester, so nice and local for me, which is lovely. They're actually changing venues this year. They had to cancel the last years. They always have a really good lineup. They have 2 stages. They put on a lot of the well-known, should we say, new wave classic rock bands, but also some different, something a little bit different, which I like. You're not going to get exactly the same lineup there as all the other festivals. And that's a really nice one. Very nice environment. And I'm hoping the new venue, which is Whitwalls and Oldham, I'm hoping that the new venue for this year will be as good as the last. But it's a well-run festival, should we say. There's a press room there. There's enough tables. Each journalist has got a table to themselves, which is very nice. I brought my kids there once. It's very family-friendly festival as well, which is lovely. And they set up a chessboard in the press room and happily playing chess while I was interviewing.
How about
that? Really nice attitude from the organisers. And that's what you want. They had somebody in charge of organising the actual interviews for you, so you didn't have to do that in advance. With some festivals you can sort of organise them beforehand, and then you're not sure where you're going to be able to actually interview them, and it can be quite difficult, or what time, but it's run very well at SOS. There's somebody there to sort of liaise between the bands and the journalists and whatnot. So I think that'd be one of my favourites. And there's a few others, and there's a few that I'm going to be covering for the first time this year. Heretic Fest is one I'm really looking forward to, and it's one that I mentioned in Sheffield. Again, a 3-day festival this, so very ambitious, really great lineup. I'm very excited to cover that one. And then there's others, there's smaller ones, there's Bradstock in Bradford, and Stone Dead is another one really enjoyed covering.
Tell me, being Americans, we would hear about Donington back in the day, when it was Monsters of Rock. Now it's kind of the Download Festival. But, Glastonbury has been going on for more than 50 years, and it's kind of turned into this small little thing in the field with a pyramid to really the enormous showcase that it is today. And you look at the names on there, yes, you'll see the headliners like Paul McCartney, Billie Eilish, Kendrick Lamar, but look down the list, and there's all sorts of amazing bands there. I don't know if they have it lined up every day quite yet, but have you ever gone to any of those huge ones at all over the years?
Not Donington, but yes, Glastonbury. Mm-hmm. And the last time I went to Glastonbury was in '94, and that's also the last time I ever camped. I don't do camping anymore.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, '94 was known for having a great lineup, so I was really glad that I did Glastonbury that year. Beautiful weather, and I had the smallest tent in the field, which I borrowed from a friend. No facilities. Yeah, I like my luxuries a bit more these days. But yeah, that was a really good experience.
Right.
Hey, this is Anne Estella, and you're listening to the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock Podcast.
On social media, you definitely have a glamorous rock and roll presence between your beautiful colored hair and all the cool rock outfits you bring. You fit the mold of a rock journalist, but also, someone you don't want to mess with backstage, right? You better be on the level with this woman, or she's not going to take it.
Yeah, that's what I'm going for. That's exactly the look I'm going for. So yeah, I'm glad it comes across.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think that probably helps too with again, like we were talking about before, making people comfortable with talking to you. If you look the way that you do, they feel like you're a fan and you're kind of part of the world. If you walk in there in a suit and tie, I'm sure they're thinking, "Oh, geez, what's this guy all about?" It's fun to look like that, but I think it also helps to kind of let people know what you're all about. That you're there to look at them from a fan's perspective, or someone who appreciates music.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Image is important. Whether it's professional image, whether it's the band's image, it's important. And I like to look like I'm in the right job, shall we say. Apart from that, I love dressing up. I love everything I wear. So, you don't get much chance really to wear that sort of stuff walking the dog. So, when I go to the festivals, I like to bring my festival gear with me, and that's it.
Well, what about bands? Talk to me about, and I know you say you moved to Manchester in '94. A lot of that Brit pop was very popular. Like you say, Oasis were about to take over the world around that time. And I'm a huge Oasis fan. I feel like you can't really understand the Oasis experience as an American. That the experience is not the same, because it just, as far as culturally, what was going on in the UK during that time, with like the end of Thatcherism and the rise of some more liberal politicians, creating a new scene that was very British. It's not just like, what's America doing? Okay, we'll do the same thing. No, this is something that was yours, that people could take pride in again. Young people were kind of having their voices heard. Time film and music and fashion and politics was all kind of going the UK's way, because yes, Oasis were popular in America. Yes, they sold some records, but not nearly on the same level. They were just another band of that 90s era. Whereas in the UK, they're the new Beatles. They're the lovely lads. They're the people who really made people proud to be English again. And so
particularly if you happen to be living in Manchester at the time.
I bet.
I mean, you couldn't go anywhere without hearing an Oasis track. And I went there as a metaler. I love metal, rock, goth, all that stuff. So to me, it was like, do I like this? I'm not sure, And it was all like Blur or Oasis at that time. So if you were from London, it was more likely to be Blur. And if you're from, imagine I'd gone from London to Manchester, but as soon as, Oasis was everywhere, like I said. And as soon as I kind of got into them, I thought, oh yeah, these are amazing. These guys, this band is just phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, now if I listen to Oasis, it just takes me right back to that time, to 95, 96, and hearing them. I'd go into the student union for my lunch, Oasis would be playing. it was an amazing time. It really was, and you got that real sense walking around Manchester. There's a real spirit, you know what I mean, like an atmosphere, and it was phenomenal. I loved it. Yeah.
Wow, sorry I missed it. Because. No, seriously, because honestly, I didn't get into Oasis right away. Jackson and our tastes run a little older anyway, right? We kind of like music from the 60s and 70s, even though we grew up mostly in the 80s and the 90s. And so if people our age like stuff in the 90s, I was suspect of it. I'm like, you're the reason there was New Kids on the Block, people. I don't want to know what you like now, okay? You're suspect. I'll just go back and listen to the Stones from the 70s. I'll listen to Led Zeppelin. I'll listen to Black Sabbath. But then eventually when I got into them, I'm like, well, Oasis are brilliant. Why weren't they bigger in America? And they were, but nothing like they were in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many differences between over there and us over here, in terms of what's popular and what is. I mean, I know you've got UK bands that are bigger over there than they were in England.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah, I mean, who can sort of say what the reason is for that? Who knows? It's one of those things. We'll never know.
So tell me about some bands that you're digging these days. I was fortunate enough to see a Canadian band called the Sheepdogs when they came to London here recently. That was fun. It's fun to find new young bands who are great to see live. Who can you turn us on to that maybe we might not know about?
Do you know what? There's so many that I'm just reluctant to give you any names for fear of missing somebody else out.
Sure.
Like when you're put on the spot, you'll say something and then afterwards think, I should have said that, and I don't want to make that mistake.
Fair enough.
So I would just say, have a look at any of the lineup on any of the festivals that I'm covering this year, and they are all really good bands. I mean, okay, well, I say all the ones that I've heard of that I know are really good, and they are definitely worth checking out.
Why don't you just remind us of all the festivals that you're going to this year that you're lined up for?
I've got Road Rage coming up really soon, so that's in Sheffield at the Corporation. That's got Tyler's Dogster Moor on it, and it's got Gorilla Riot on it, and I would go just for them. So yeah, Revival Black, brilliant band from Liverpool. I mean, the band that the festival I've just been to, you had some great bands like Bastet, and I know she's doing a lot of festivals this year, and Scarlet Rebels, who just had their album go into the UK charts at number 10. So yeah, those are all brilliant bands. Howling Tides as well. I know I said I wasn't going to mention bands, so I'm going to mention them all now. Anchor Lane, who I managed to meet and interview. Well, I've interviewed them before, but actually meet in the flesh for the first time last weekend. A brilliant band from Scotland, and some amazing bands coming out of Wales. You've got like Florence Black and a load of others that I've discovered. So yeah, Road Rage coming up. Then you've got the Rock and Roll Outlaw Weekend. Now this is a really, really nice festival at the Globe in Glossop. It's not the easiest to get to, but when you get there, you can be assured of a warm welcome.
Okay.
It's one of those really friendly festivals that I love. Then there's Bradstock, which I think is the first one. I think it's the inaugural Bradstock in Bradford. I've not heard too much about it lately, but I'm being assured it is going ahead. So that's the 1st of May.
Okay.
I think it's just a one-day festival. Again, really good lineup there. I mean, you see a lot of these festivals, the lineups do overlap.
Sure.
But of course, because all the festivals want the bands that are doing great, and they all are. So you've got bands like Hollow Star playing, some of them, and they're one of my favourite bands as well at the moment. Have been for a while. Heretic Fest I mentioned, that's in Sheffield, and then SOS is in July. North Manchester, Stone Dead in August, at the end of August, and you've got Rock Witch, which I think is the same weekend, which makes it difficult for me because I've covered both these festivals before.
Uh-oh.
But to do them both at the same weekend is hard. It's hard going.
That's a big ask.
So, yeah, I think, I sort of alternate. One year do Stone Dead, one do Rock Witch, something like that. But again, very, very different festivals. Rock Witch is indoors, from what I remember. I think they might have an outdoor acoustic bit the night before. I'm not quite sure, but really good festival, really nicely organised Rock Witch. Rocking the Bowl is one that I'm going back to this year. Yeah, that's great. A lot of people seem to be cottoning on to Rocking the Bowl. Really nice, really well organised, a lot of volunteers.
Well, I was just going to say, what's interesting to me is when we spoke earlier, because you did kind of rip Winter's End for not being the ideal venue and for not being welcoming, not only to fans, but to the journos who were backstage. You would think after putting that out there, a lot of people were like, all right, well, let's make sure she doesn't come to our festival. But it's been kind of the opposite, hasn't it? It's like people are like, oh, let's get her to our festival and talk to the bands, yeah?
I was going to mention that actually, because within a day or so of that article being published, I had invitations from the organisers of about 4 or 5 festivals. I know Legends of Rock, who had their festival on at the same time as Winter's End. So they've invited me next year. Breaking Bands Fest, Shark Fest, Winter Storm, and may have been 1 or 2 others. Those are the ones that stick in my mind now. But like I say, fully booked for this year. I just can't. I don't take on anymore. My dog will just own me.
Right.
I can't stay away that long. But it's so nice of them to invite me, and they all wrote to me and said, "Well, we can give you this, we can give you that." And I'm thinking, I don't need red carpet. I don't need any luxury. It's just somewhere where you feel welcome and where the festival goers are given a good experience. That's what I consider a good festival. And those are the kind I want to cover.
A little bit of luxury wouldn't hurt, though.
Well, yeah, it wouldn't hurt, would it? Yeah.
You mentioned in your article about how these bands, especially up-and-coming bands who are just trying to get noticed, are not going to say anything about the conditions because they can't.
Oh, no.
And so it's nice that you can have a voice and point things out where you think that need improvements to improve not only your experience, the fans' experience, and these bands' experience also.
Absolutely. And people talk. Other members of the press talk. I consider these events, in a way, as a networking thing for press, because you're all there, usually only when things are bad, mind. When things are good, people are having too much fun to compare notes, and you can tell how things are going. But absolutely with the bands, and of course I talk to them. Like most of the bands I interview, I know, I've spoken to them, or even the ones I haven't. I'm certainly, I get on with them all, and I feel like I've got this sort of instant rapport. Once we chatted for a couple of minutes, that's it. We're best friends. So yeah, they will tell me things. I think, well, that's not quite right, and you shouldn't feel like that. And but they will never say anything, and they won't, because
they can't.
Last thing they want is to be. I think a lot of them, and especially the bands I interview, the less established ones, the newer bands. I think they feel almost that they're powerless. What can they do or say? You'll see on their Facebook page up event, oh, thanks to blah, 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 putting us on. And it's the same every time. I'm thinking, all these bands can't have such a great experience. Yeah, I mean, if the crowd really digs them and they have a really good reception, then that's great. And that's, I'm guessing, the most important thing from their point of view. But that doesn't mean that that's where their good experience needs to end for them. They should have an all-round positive experience in an event, whether or not they're being paid or not, by the promotions. Unpick on the whole merch thing is another issue. It came up on Twitter recently that some festivals and some venues and promoters are charging 25% on not just profits from merch, but on the total sales. And the way that they're managing to do this, from what I can gather, is by putting one of their own staff there to sell it. And we say, well, we're providing somebody for you to sell your stuff, therefore, we will take a cut. But I say to the bands, well, are you given a choice? Does the venue say to you, well, we can provide somebody and take a cut, or we'll allow you to sell your own merch and not take a cut? And they say, well, no, we're not given that choice. So it's not a real choice, is it? So there's a lot of things that aren't right. But yeah, same thing. Very few bands will say anything about it. And if they do, if they're not happy about the situation, it will still be very hush-hush. They won't come out publicly and say, oh, well, this is what happened to me.
Do you want to tell people where they can see your articles or where to follow you on social media, where to find out where you're going?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, do I even know what my own social media platforms are? Well, I'm Anne Estella Rocks, or Anne Estella Rock on Twitter and Instagram, Anne_Estella_rocks. I'm there. I'm on Facebook, Anne Estella. My articles are currently in AMP, which is myampmusic.co, I believe.
There you go.
And yeah, I'm on social media quite a lot. Probably too much. There was a time when I didn't do social media, and now I can't live without it. So, which I guess is the case for a lot of people in this business. And bands, I'll try and tag a band in something on Twitter, and I can't find them, and I contact them. What's your Twitter handle? Oh, well, we don't do Twitter. Like, get on there.
That's a bad idea, yeah. Absolutely. Well, no, we've really enjoyed speaking with you here this morning for Jackson.
Thank you.
And wish you all the luck, not only with your career here, but, with all these festivals that you're going to make sure you're not 4 inches deep in mud in those 4-inch heels. That would make it really hard to get around.
I've been lucky so far. It's always been dry whenever I've come to a festival. Boiling hot, yeah, but dry. So can't complain too much about that. I'm hoping next time I speak to you to have some news about AMP, that I'll have a nice sponsor and I'll have a TV station to put it on.
Well, excellent.
But that's my focus now. That's my main focus. Yeah, getting that out there.
Well, all the best, and thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Well, great chatting to you too. Really, it really has been lovely. So,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
It restores my faith that there are some good people in this industry. Talking to guys like you.
Thank you for thinking that we're in the industry.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Or that we're good people.
That too.
Phew. Well, that wraps up quite the 70th show for us here on the Ugly American Werewolf in London Rock podcast with two amazing women in rock. Amanda Lehmann, who we know from the show from a little while here, amazing musician, songwriter, arranger, singer, talent, who has a new song out, One Last Spin. And also Anne Estella, a new friend of the show, a rock journalist, who's out there living the life and trying to get attention for the bands and the festivals that she likes, that she cares about, that treats the fans and the bands with respect. And so we encourage you to go to any shows out there that she's attending and covering this year. As usual, folks, as we wrap this up, we want to know, did we get something right? Did we get something wrong? Did we miss the point? Please let us know. You got to tweet us at ugly_werewolf or at actionjack72. DM us, let us know the bands, the albums, the concerts, the DVDs, the rock properties you want us to cover. Please make sure and subscribe and download anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Amazon, Google Play. Good Pods has been very good to us lately. And check out all of our friends at the Pantheon Podcast Network. You can go to pantheonpodcast.com or at Pantheon Pods. A lot of amazing shows, and we're really proud to be a part of that. Now, next week, we're going to get a little bit into our reunion. Yes, Jackson was here in London with me for about a day and then a little bit of another day. He's really with his family, but we got to have a blast running around London, checking out rock and roll legendary homes and buildings and haunts and places where the old school rockers that you hear us talk about on the show frequented and partied at and lived at over the decades. We had a lot of fun with that. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit about the Genesis show I got to see. I got to see the second to last show of Genesis' career here in London at the O2. A lot of it was great. Some of it was sad. I'm going to get into all of that on the show with Jackson here next week. So until then, all you rock and rollers all around the world, be cool and stay safe.